Welcome to PACKOLUTION. In this podcast series, you'll hear the experts of the packaging industry talking about sustainability and the future of packaging. It is brought to you by Vatron and hosted by one of its founders, Michaela Wachtel, and sales director Thom.
Welcome to another episode of PACKOLUTION, the disruptive podcast brought to you by Vatron. Today we have Thom, CEO of Clarus Films, as our guest, with whom we will be talking about the changes in the flexible packaging market and how the industry is getting ready for these changes. Welcome, Norman. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your career path?
Firstly, a warm welcome also from my side. I'm quite happy to participate in this platform. It's a pleasure and I appreciate being approached. Regarding my career, I started actually as a craftsman in a family business owned by my father for heating systems and air conditioning. And my very first step out of the family business was as a consultant for different kind of industries. And finally, in 2006, I stepped into the packaging industry as a managing director, CEO for a business unit of folding cartons and POS display business. And in 2014, at the last career step, so to speak, as a group CEO for the private equity-owned Clarus Films, which is headquartered in Dietzenbach.
Our next question is always about the company you're working at. You already mentioned Clarus Film. You've been in the packaging film industry for 40 years, so there's certainly a lot to share.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, I need to say that we love what we do, and Clarus Films is the reason why we are continuing to innovate future-oriented films and paper solutions. Clarus was founded in 1978, quite a long time ago, focused on polyethylene and POF shrink films as a distributor at that time. And later on, the beginning of 2000s, we diversified into the BOPP film business, where we became strategic partner at that time of Treofan for BOPP films, slitting for end consumers like big brands in the chocolate industry, for instance. And based on that, we developed further from a company doing 5 million euros turnover up to close to 90 million euros in 2022. And we had also some period where we had hobbies like extrusion. So we extruded polyolefin shrink film as the last production company in Germany, but we stopped this activity due to the cost pressure in 2015. And ever since, we are a value-added distributor focusing on global sourcing and European-wide sales activities. And our core mission is to develop and support the circular economy as good as possible. And that's the reason why it's really good to have stopped extrusion, since we want to be independent and have our freedom to go into new markets like the paper solution markets, but also the packaging machine market.
What are the various sustainability initiatives in the film industry? And how does this relate to the price pressure we have as well?
Yeah, sustainability is the key. So Clarus in 2019, after our new investor, Premium Equity Partners, came into the business, decided to change the strategy from being much wider if it comes to packaging solutions. So we are not talking anymore about packaging film being part of the supply of the packaging films, but also being a major partner in paper solutions, flexible paper solutions, and packaging machines. And our core mission, if it comes to sustainability, is to offer the best solution for the customers. And it doesn't matter for us if it's a plastics film or if it's a flexible paper or even other solutions. What we do see is that plastic film still has a future, mainly since the monomaterials are recyclable. And we also see first steps into the right direction coming to recyclate-based films, even if it's mechanical or chemical recycled. This will be one of the big steps forward. Of course, there are also opportunities in having compostable solutions, either home compostable or industrial compostable films. where we see that there's, let's say, currently only a niche. If it comes to flexible paper, we are unfortunately still at the very beginning, since we need to have films with not only a sealing intention, which is working properly, but also barriers against mineral oil, oxygen, but also water vapor. So this is what we currently see and what we are supporting as good as possible, since we do have the expertise also to test these new solutions at the customers, but also in our showroom where we do have flow pack machines, for instance.
That's the same experience we have at Watron, that these paper solutions are not there yet. We're getting there, but it's there's still a long way to go, I suppose. But the other part of my question was, how do you see the cost pressure on these sustainable developments? Is there any impact on it?
Yeah, of course, we do see two effects right now. First of all, such kind of new innovations are in the first phase, so to speak, on development. And that means always that you have higher costs, since you didn't have the ramp up for the production to have a higher volume. This is the first thing. The second thing is major players are also giving an additional marketing premium on top. So both effects make it more costly also for us, but also for the end consumers and for all the members in the supply chain. If you compare it to standard solutions, and we should somehow forget about the Corona crisis, where we had price increases also in the standard resins and standard film solutions, the film, even if it's compostable or somehow having recycling part in the recipe, they are much more expensive compared to standard solutions. And if it comes to European regulations, and we do see there might be penalties and extra costs on tax, what the government wants to place, but we are talking about some 80 cents per kilo. But if you compare the standard solution to the, let's say, more innovative future-oriented solution, it's much higher than 80 cents the cost. So there's no motivation for the packaging machine drivers to change away from the standard solutions, unfortunately.
In our podcast, we like to not only talk about Europe, but also about differences in other parts of the world. So are there different specifications in different countries regarding packaging films?
Yeah, of course. But before we go globally, we could even stay in Europe, because we see already differences from Germany to France, but also to UK. Even if UK is not anymore a member of the European Union, but different countries do have different circular approaches in place. Some of them might have no step done into this direction. And that means there are countries which have already invested in recycling the capacities. And that's the reason why they are staying or focusing maybe more on PP, others more on PE solutions. Whereas, for instance, in France, there is no circular economy if it comes to PP or PE. So they are focusing more on paper and want to get rid of films as soon as possible. If it comes to UK, those guys, they started with mono solutions in their mind, but then compostable solutions were preferred. And now we see that they are open for polyethylene and for PP mono solutions. But principally, you can see currently that we are not at the final station if it comes to sustainable solutions. So there are many ideas, many innovations, and it's worth to test most of them and to see where we are in the next upcoming 3 to 5 years, and then to decide what the best solution for my application is. And if we come to the more global view on it, we clearly see that the growth globally is done in Far East. Not only China, but the whole region is growing much faster compared to US or to Europe. And they are still investing huge money into new capacities for polypropylene, but also for polyester films. Whereas in Europe, we want to get rid of polyester because we do not think that it's the right way to go, ? But in Far East, the growth and the need for packaging on given solutions, it's still very high. I think not only regions, but also countries need to decide by themselves what's good and what's not good. And as we can see in the whole discussions, Germany plays a major part in technology, but we are, let's say, population-wise small. So we do not have a big impact. So what we only can do is give best advices on techniques to our friends in the world.
That's an interesting dilemma. Do you think it'll ever be possible to completely replace packaging films? And what about the paper packaging? You referred to this before.
I love this question, but it always comes to that point. And, my vision is, and I'm a Star Trek guy, if you had replicators, then of course you do not need packaging anymore because everything could be reproduced in your room. And the first step into this direction are 3D printers. So I think step by step, if you have the option to produce things locally, so to speak, if it comes to 3D printers, then you have a reduction of packaging in this case. But in the short and midterm, I do believe that packaging has a role to play, a major role, because we are not only talking about protecting the goods, but also giving a longer shelf life to food. And this is a dilemma, like you said earlier. So should we rather spend more packaging material to protect food, for instance, or shall we let go, but then increase the food waste? I do not say that I have the right answer to these questions, but this is the reason why Clarus, for instance, we established a kind of consulting, try to get all possible point of views into the picture for our customers, because it's not easy. This or that solution, you really need to figure out what my application is, what the shelf life is, where the material comes from, and all these different kind of aspects.
I think this has a lot to do with LCA basis. If you can work with LCA for establishing complete impact, that'll be good. Another comment on correct answer, in my opinion, is that food waste has a far higher impact on carbon footprint than packaging waste does.
Yeah, I share this opinion. And just to give the last answer to the last question about paper packaging. Our opinion is there is a need and also a part for paper packaging. And we love to sell paper and to substitute films wherever it's a good step into this direction. But surely there is a parallel world. So there are applications which needs to be run with films. Others needs to be run, for instance, with aluminium foil, even if this volume is also decreasing. And we are happy to find new innovations on paper and step by step to replace the films. But at the end of the day, and this is also a kind of mathematics, if we are talking about, let's say, 200,000 tons of BOPP a year in Germany, if we want to replace that volume by paper, it's a big step forward in capacities. And the whole story, what is behind. So once again, what I said, short and midterm, I do not see a big step away from packaging, either if it's paper or film. And we will see where the whole industry and the innovations will guide us to.
I think it also revolves around performance and sustainability. Can sustainable films have similar specifications as conventional films? How's your view on that?
Let's say, of course, sustainable films could have the same performance. And if I see high-performance machines, flow-pack machines for paper, the paper is running more or less the same speed as high-performance films. But of course, you need to have adjustments in the machine technology. If it comes to films where you have like mechanical recycled material in, that might cause some inefficiencies in the performance. I think also the mechanical recycling will develop step by step and will have less impact on reducing performance. But if it comes to PCR, post-consumer recycled resins, I do not see a performance loss here. But this is the principal discussion. If we really want to step into the chemical recycling and all the energy consumption and so on. And of course, the next question, and this is what we are currently discussing internally, let's say our business is around 60% of food, pharma, medical applications. Is there really a need to have PCR films in this industry? Or is it better to have always kind of fresh resins and then do a downcycling? What we are currently also doing in paper. If you see the paper solutions for food applications, this is also not recycling, it's also downcycling, because the recycled paper is not coming back to food applications in paper for the moment. We will see where the whole process will be in the next years.
That's a good point, because downcycling has this kind of stigma around it that it's not good. But there is so much demand for downcycled material for other applications out of the food industry, which can help the whole industry a lot.
Absolutely. Let's say, this is my opinion, you should never be too strict in argumentation. There should also always be room to have compromises. This is how we can develop faster than to be too strict.
We've already talked about sustainability and downcycling now a lot. And I would like to focus on another topic regarding this issue, which is the compostability of films. I heard it's rather a niche product, a compostable film. How come?
We have started with compostable solutions in 2019 with first trials, and we have approached many customers to substitute films. Here we have seen really performance losses on the packaging machines and very high costs. But I'm not saying that maybe this is a niche, but this is one puzzle in the whole game. And compostable solutions will always have a future. There are things where they do have an advantage, and there are other things where they do have disadvantages. Let's say if it comes to my neighborhood, if I imagine all waste which I bring into the yellow bin is placed in my compostable solution at home, I think sooner or later my neighbor will kill me because it's not composting that fast like the hill is growing, so to speak. And we also see that the communities with the industrial composting processes are not happy to have films and compostable solutions in the process.
That's good that you're already talking that. I would like to just ask a question before you're talking any further, because I would like to clarify, are we talking about home compostability or industrial compostabilities? Because I think for the consumer, it's actually really interesting. Do I put it away at home, or will it be composted there or somewhere else? Which kind of compostability are we talking about?
Let's say if we come to the advantages, and I think this is one of the visions of retail overall. They want to have circular products, but of course they want to also to have home compostable solutions, to have a solution against littering in the environment. And if we are talking about industrial compostability, then littering in the environment is not possible. But anyway, I think the communities and the technique in their composting facilities should also be improved, because there is a need to bring, for instance, films which are industrially compostable into this process. And the major thing, what I see personally at home, is you need to make sure that your members in the households identify which products are compostable, home compostable, industrial compostable, which products are not going into the yellow bin in Germany, or which one could be done into the paper cycle. Unless it's so difficult for unskilled members, so to speak, to identify which way to go, I think this is a huge step what we all need to go in the next years.
And shouldn't there be an emphasis on producing home compostable films? Shouldn't that have a higher status from your point of view, or are there different views about that? What's more important, home compostable products or industrial compostable products?
For the current development, I would say home compostable solutions, since this was the point I mentioned, that retail wants to have a solution which could also be composted in the free environment, the topic of littering.
Okay, I understand, yeah.
Rather unknown product at the moment are these cellulose films. They are compostable and even home compostable from what I know. But few people have them on their radar. Can you explain a little bit more about this?
We do have cellulose films in our portfolio, and those kind of films are available since years, since decades, so to speak. But I think they are expensive if you compare them to standard films and other solutions. And of course, they do have in production higher energy consumption, and there is also an approach to make it transparent, which is not that environmental friendly. And yes, they are home compostable, that's good. But the issue for the time being is that they are disturbing the paper cycle as well as the plastic cycle if it comes to the yellow bin and to the paper bin. So this material is somehow disturbing the process. The home compostable solution is given, so that's fine. But again, the end consumer, that means you and me, we should really realize that this film is only for compostable, as a compostable option.
Is this because these films are not identified as such, as being cellulose, so therefore the consumer doesn't know and gets confused?
Of course, if it comes to UK, for instance, they are branding this kind of packaging, so that like Intel inside. So it's a very good step. But principally, not all films or cellulose packaging solutions are clearly described on the packaging, where to go with them. And we do have the same if it comes to this plastics scenario and paper laminated films. It's not 100% clear for the end consumer is this going into the paper cycle or into another cycle, or if it's simply remaining waste?
Quite frankly, I've been in packaging for a few decades as well, but I'm always confused where to put these paper plastic breads, for example. I don't know where to put them, in which bin.
It's a kind of no monomaterial. You have mainly It's a BAPP film. Okay, you can argue that's less than 5% of the whole package. This is this crazy rule they do have in mind. But the best is to replace the film from the paper and bring the paper into the paper bin and the plastics into the plastic bin. Yeah.
Curious to see if the average consumer does that, but that's the topic, I suppose.
Another different topic about the special features. Are there any special features to consider with packaging films in terms of transport and storage? Is there anything that is interesting to discuss?
I do understand the question in two ways. The first way is if it comes to transport, to secure transport units, then of course there's still a big future for packaging. And I need to say to film, because the film is logistic-wise and weight-wise much more efficient compared to other solutions. If it comes to stocking material, let's say we are talking about a standard polypropylene film without printing. Those kind of films could be stocked for a longer period of time without having an end of life cycle. If it comes to compostable solutions and then cellulose-based material, then of course you need to make sure that the circumstances in the warehouse are right conditioned to the kind of film or paper. So this is also a thing what we need to consider in the future, that really makes sure that we do have the right conditions for stocking material.
That's really interesting, that it's not that just plain take a film, wrap it around and then transport it, but that there are different aspects that you have to consider. It's really interesting because also this topic with transport is packaging wise. There are a lot of issues when it comes to transport. We've already talked about that in several podcasts already. So also for packaging films, it's not trivial, the transport and the storage, obviously.
Yeah, of course. The best example for that is if we're talking about PVC film, which is not the most famous film, but there's still a niche, for instance, for candles. If we're talking about PVC film and transporting PVC film in summer times, the material is starting to shrink in the truck if the outside temperatures are too high. And then you have, let's say, lost the material. This is a best example for it, and different materials have different requirements for the environment.
We've reached the end of this episode. Is there anything you'd like to add?
I always add in such kind of discussions. It's of course not only the industry and distributors like we are, or technical guys like you are. We need to innovate and give most power into the process that we are really going into this circular world and to secure the environment. This is, let's say, the overall vision of industrial companies in our packaging industry. But I need always to say that responsibility does not stop in the industry. So it's all private households, all you and me's on the planet, which should also take over responsibility for the environment. And that means, let's say, buy less or more focused, try to avoid packaging, try to avoid waste, try to avoid food waste. And if it comes to selecting packaging materials like paper, compostable solution and so on, please make sure that material finds the right bin.
I think these are very good, last and wise words. I completely agree with that. We cannot do this alone. So thank you for that. And this concludes another episode of our podcast, PACKOLUTION. Thank you, Norman, for sharing your experiences and vision with us. Very interesting for us and hopefully for our listeners. Please stay tuned in this channel for more inspiring episodes of PACKOLUTION with experts in the packaging industry.